For years, Kody Brown preached one thing above all else: purity. He built his entire family, his entire empire, on a foundation of strict rules. Obedience, silence, and his absolute control were the pillars of the Brown household. But what happens when the very daughter he fought so desperately to keep safe becomes the one to bring it all crashing down? This is the story of Aurora Brown, the quiet daughter who found the courage to speak the words her father feared most. And when she did, the carefully constructed world of the Browns began to crumble. Inside the Brown home, purity wasn't a choice. It was a law. No dating, no texting boys. You didn't even ask. To Kody, this strictness was a sign of strength, a fortress protecting his family. But to Aurora, it was a cage. She watched as her father twisted faith into a set of rigid rules and warped the idea of love into a tool for shame. Every joke had a line you couldn't cross, every dream had a limit. But behind her quiet, obedient smile, Aurora was starting to see the cracks in the foundation. And when she finally found her voice, the walls of that supposedly perfect family didn't just crack, they began to tremble. It all started with something so small, so innocent, a group chat with some college friends. For any other young person, it would be completely normal, just a part of everyday life. But when Kody Brown saw it, he didn't see friendship. He saw sin. He saw the outside world corrupting his daughter. "Aurora," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "this is not who you are. I raised you to be pure, but this time, something was different." Through her tears, she looked him straight in the eye and breathed the words that would change everything. "No, Dad, you raised me to be afraid." The silence that followed was more deafening than any argument, any scream. It hung in the air, thick with years of unspoken resentment, too. And then came the words that would shatter the Brown family forever. "I'm done living by your purity rules." It wasn't a dramatic, screaming fight. Shortly after that confrontation, she was gone. There was no big farewell, no tearful goodbye at the door, just a letter left on her perfectly made bed. It read, "You turned purity into a weapon that hurts people. I need to find out who I am, away from your rules." The departure of his quiet, obedient daughter sent shockwaves through the Brown household. The supposed peace of their home evaporated, replaced by chaos and confusion. Robin, her mother, reportedly wept through the nights, inconsolable. The younger children, who had always looked up to Aurora, whispered her name as if she were a ghost, a cautionary tale. And Kody, his grief quickly turned to anger. He framed it as a betrayal. He told himself, and anyone who would listen, that Aurora had been influenced by the world, that she'd been led astray by dark forces. But deep down, in the quiet moments when he was alone, he knew the truth. She wasn't lost, she was free, and he was left behind. In her new life, away from the suffocating rules of her father, Aurora finally felt like she could breathe. She took art classes, something she'd always dreamed of. She talked to strangers without feeling a knot of anxiety in her stomach. She laughed a real, genuine laugh, free from guilt or regret. One night, at a local open mic, she found the courage to step onto the stage. Facing a room full of strangers, she shared a piece of her truth. "Silence isn't purity," she told them, her voice shaking but clear. "It's just fear wearing a halo." The crowd was stunned, then erupted in applause, too. Those powerful words didn't stay in that small coffee shop. A video of her performance went viral. Overnight, Aurora became a symbol. To her supporters, she was a brave hero, a voice for everyone who felt trapped. To her critics, and to her family's followers, she was a lost soul, a rebel who had turned her back on everything good. But for Aurora, it was simpler than all of that. It was liberation. One afternoon, Kody saw her suit. He was driving through town and spotted her through a cafe window. She was with friends, animated, smiling, truly alive and completely unbroken. He wanted to feel that familiar surge of anger, of righteous indignation. But he couldn't. She wasn't corrupted. She was happy. For the first time, Kody really looked at his own reflection in the glass. He didn't see a patriarch or a spiritual leader. Saw a man who had spent his life confusing fear with faith, As he drove away, his vast world, his kingdom built on control, suddenly felt incredibly small and empty. That evening, for the first time in a long time, Kody prayed. But it wasn't a prayer to command or to control. It was a prayer to understand. Because for the first time in years, Kody Brown wasn't defending his purity. He was questioning it. Seasons passed. Then, one day, Aurora came home for a single family dinner. The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife, filled with years of things left unsaid. Kody looked at her from across the long dining table. "You look different," he said, his voice raspy. She offered a small, knowing smile. "I am," he pressed, his old defensiveness creeping back in. "You think you're free?" he asked, almost like a challenge. Aurora's response was quiet, but it landed with the force of a thunderclap. "No," she said, her gaze steady. "I know I am." Kody fell silent, because in that moment he knew she wasn't just acting out, she was healing. Then came the final breaking point. As Aurora's story spread, the world wasn't just listening, it was reacting. The religious community that had once held Kody up as an example began to distance themselves. Reports surfaced that his church had excommunicated him. The media, smelling blood in the water, descended, hounding him for comments. In an instant, the man who had built a dynasty on absolute domination was left with nothing but a ringing silence. That night, as he sat alone, his phone buzzed. A text from Aurora. Just 3 words. "Thank you, Dad." He stared at the screen, unable to tell if it was an offer of forgiveness or a final farewell. The next morning, his phone rang. It was a major television network. They wanted him to come on their show, to tell his side of the story, to respond to everything. Kody looked at the phone, the caller ID flashing. The whole world was watching, waiting. Would he finally tell the truth, his truth? Or would he retreat back into the comfortable silence that had defined his life for so long? The phone kept ringing, an insistent, relentless sound. He took a breath, and then he answered.